Previously on the Aruba switching story, we heard from Vincent Giles and Steve Bartlett about AOSCX resiliency, and we heard about VSX, what happens with a link failure. In this episode, Vincent and Steve are going to talk to us more about VSX and demonstrate what happens with a VSX node failure, the benefits of the resiliency with VSX, as well as a live upgrade.
In this topology, VSX Live 2 is used to provide active-active layer 2 connectivity to the hypervisor, and as well as a logical VTEP part of the EVPN VXLAN fabric. So the NIC driver of the standalone server will run standard LSCP. Both VSX nodes share the same virtual IP known as active gateway, which is active on both the primary and the secondary. Likewise, they also share the same Anycast IP address for sourcing and receiving VXLAN traffic. Data plane is virtualized not only for the traditional layer 2 multi-chassis link aggregation, but also for the VXLAN data plane, where the VSX cluster acts as the unique logical VTEP.
Great. So let's see these benefits in action, Vincent. And can you shut down the VSX primary, as it seems to be the more critical node in the VSX pair?
Sure. Let's power off the VSX primary switch. Before doing so, let's make sure that we have the link between the VSX cluster and the switch connecting IXIA that are monitored. So let's first restore the link that I shut here. I'm going to stop the traffic just to explain you what are those graphs on top. So those graphs are the packet per second. In green, this is what is received by the layer 2 switch that I connected to the VSX cluster. So this is the 3810, Aruba 3810 that I connected. So on the left side, this is connected to the primary. On the right side, this is connected to the secondary. And my IXIA probe is behind that switch, sending those flow. So when I start IXIA traffic, you'll see the traffic increasing here on the left and on the right side as the flow are distributed. So this is again, inbound is green on the 3810 and blue is outbound. So this is the number of packets per second. So you can see, and there is a lot of traffic here. So we have nominal situation. So the video is streaming. We have the IXIA that is in nominal situation. So we can now power off the VSX primary with our intelligent PDU. So for that, I'm connecting to the PDU. On to control. And let's now take a look on the left side. So this is the primary here. You see no traffic, real-time traffic monitored on that switch here, and we saw no interrupt on that one. And you can check with me on IXIA.
Yeah, let's look at the IXIA and see what we have. So that's an upper limit of, well, just over 226 milliseconds in terms of failover.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, bad considering this outage on the network. So can we expect a similar sort of outage when we do an upgrade, Vincent?
Actually, you can even expect better resiliency during what we call a VSX Live Upgrade.
Fantastic. Well, can you show us? And can you proceed with an upgrade between two major software versions? Because this is typically what is important, in operations for our customers.
No problem. First, let's make sure that we have the VSX primary that is power up again and restore the VSX cluster. So for that, I'm going to connect on the console of those switches here, and you see the primary is rebooting. I can check on the secondary here. You see the secondary is not seeing yet the primary that I power off. So we have to wait for that primary to be restored before we proceed with any upgrade. So let's wait a few seconds for the primary to get restored and then being fully in the cluster before we proceed with the next step. So the switch is up now. It's reachable through the management plane. I can do a show VSX status on that one. And you can see that both switches are working together in the cluster. So now we can go to NetEdit and to prepare first the upload of the new firmware on both VSX primary and VSX secondary to prepare that new image and to reduce the maintenance time, the window that we need to ask to proceed with an upgrade. So by preparing the image on the flash of the switch, it's gaining a bit of time during the upgrade. So let's do that through NetEdit. So what I'm going to consider those two switches, 3A and 3B, and I'm going to take the action, which is change firmware. Now you can see the version that are currently loaded on the primary and on the secondary. So I'm going to change that secondary image. I'm going to use for that this particular image, 10705. I select it and I'm going to deploy it to secondary. I'm not going to reboot after deployment because I want to use the CLI command for the VSX update software. So let's proceed with the deployment. So I'm going to select all the switch and deploy. So that is going to take a few seconds to get that new image being deployed on the secondary version and the secondary image of both VSX nodes.
Oh.
Okay.
So the firmware is now loaded. So before we start the actual upgrade itself, Vincent, can you talk us through how the VSX Live Upgrade actually works?
Sure. So the upgrade is a very well orchestrated process. Here are the 6 main steps with associated impacts. So step 0, we can say that this is the nominal situation with both CX nodes forwarding. Step 1 is the initialization of the upgrade process that immediately trigger a graceful shutdown for all the control plane protocols that are used, including LACP, OSPF, and BGP. And this very first step has an impact of less than or about 10 milliseconds. Step 2 is after the graceful shutdown, there is the actual reboot of the VSX secondary. This step has no impact on the data plane as the traffic on the VSX secondary has been already drained out from the circuits and from the link that connect the secondary, thanks to this graceful shutdown and before the secondary gets rebooted. Step 3 is when the secondary has rebooted and is joining the cluster. So at that time, there will be some synchronization happening between the primary and the secondary for all those tables that I was referring before, the MAC address, the ARP, and so on. So we have, during that synchronization time, the secondary is not forwarding traffic on the ports member of a VSX lag. So this is something that we can check with a show VSX status link up delay. And during that link up delay, that those ports are still maintained down as of matter of making sure that the synchronization is completed before they are forwarding. When it's forwarding, those LACP are taking in action here, and we can see a very few milliseconds of impact sometimes. Most of the time, there is no impact during that phase. The third impact, as you can imagine, this is exactly the same process, but this time with the VSX primary. So we have a control plane shutdown, graceful shutdown that is performed on the primary, which is causing about 10 milliseconds of impact, and not necessarily on the same flows that the flow that were impacted before, and we'll see that on Ixia. And then when the primary is rebooting, no impact as the traffic was drained out from the primary. Finally, step 6 is when the primary is restored in the cluster. And again, here, there will be almost zero impact on that. So now both switches are upgraded with the next release. Step 3, the primary was in the old version and the secondary was already rebooted with the new version. Step 6, both are running the new version.
Well, great. Well, this seems like a great orchestration mechanism for seamless upgrade operations. So can you prove this, Vincent, by way of a demonstration?
Right. So let's see this in action. Huh? So here we'll have our process for upgrading both the primary and the secondary. We'll monitor those uplinks as we did before. Then we are going to closely monitor the packet loss that we have in Ixia. We are going to move from 10.6 to 10.7, okay, because we want a major upgrade. And we are going to perform that with the VSX update software bootbank secondary that will start from the VSX primary. So let's go into this part. So let's first of all check that everything is running fine on the primary and on the secondary. So I can check that LACP information on the primary and secondary plus the remote actor and the remote partner is up, which is the case here. You can see that with a show VSX status link up delay, that everything is completed here, and the same on the other here. We can now start Ixia to load this graph with traffic and start the upgrade. So I'm going to put the console on both switches so that we follow and track all the steps together. And if I check on images, you can see secondary images is the image that I uploaded. So let's do the upgrade. Software, bootbank, and I'm going to select the secondary because this is the secondary where I loaded already the firmware. So this is a summary of what I've got as a process, and this is from 10.6 to 10.7, and there will be a reboot in sequence. Proceed, yes. So, and we'll see and monitor. You see immediately control plane shutdown initiated. There is no traffic already on the secondary. So here, real time, you can see no traffic on the secondary circuits here, and I've got the primary that is taking over the volume of traffic that is no longer running through the secondary. So let's check on Ixia. What was the impact on that? So this was 12 milliseconds. So we see the video is still running. So the video streaming over VXLAN is still there. So this is the really the first step that I was mentioning. So this is the control plane shutdown. So we will have to wait a little bit for the secondary to be ready to restart. And we'll follow that on that console here. So I will run that console, and we'll see the secondary restart. Then the secondary will reboot and join the cluster. And then we'll have the same for the primary going through a control plane Graceful shutdown. And immediately after the secondary is ready to forward, the secondary will drain out the primary, will no longer receive traffic due to this Graceful shutdown. So let's wait a little bit for the secondary to reboot first. So reboot has started. We see the VSX ISL status up. That will get to the down status in a while. Okay, the secondary is up again. We see that there is a ISL status is up. I can log on the secondary. I can do a show VSX status. Now you can see the secondary, which is the local one, is running 10.7, whereas the primary is running 10.6. You see, obviously, there is a config sync image version mismatch due to the fact that, we are in the middle of the upgrade process. And now, as I mentioned, there is synchronization happening for MAC address table, for instance, for ARP table and so on the secondary from the primary. So we need to just wait for the link up delay. So for that, I can check where we are on that link up delay with the command show VSX status, link up delay. And we see that the initial synchronization is in progress. So waiting for that. And if we do a show interface brief, we see that you have disabled by VSX is typically when we are doing that link up delay phase. So now I see that traffic is going on the primary. So the link up delay is completed. You see here traffic on the secondary here. And now on the primary, there is no traffic any longer because immediately after the secondary is forwarding, there is a control plane shutdown initiated on the primary. So that is what we just had before with the secondary, before the secondary reboot, and now this is happening on the primary. So the primary will reboot in a while and we'll go over the same process. So let's check on Ixia how much we had as an impact. So you can see now we had on same of overflows. We are monitoring those 20 flows here. So that's cumulative time. So I didn't stop and restart Ixia. This is the cumulative time after the secondary reboot and now after the Graceful shutdown of the primary. So we have a total of 19 milliseconds of interruption of those on those flows. Cumulated. And again, what we'll do at the very end of the upgrade process, we are going to stop Ixia and check what was the cumulative impact for all those flows while we had this upgrade. So we have to wait for the primary to restart. Rebooting primary. So this is a nice status that are shown on the primary CLI to explain where we are in the process of the live upgrade. All of that is available starting 10.7 from API as well. So restarting system, let's check on Ixia. No extra additional impact on the traffic, as again, the traffic was already drained out of the primary before the reboot. So the reboot as such has no impact. This is the Graceful shutdown that has an impact of 10 milliseconds. Okay, primary is now up. Can connect to it. Can do a show VSX status. We can now see that both switches are upgraded to the new firmware version 10.7.0.05. Again, we started from 10.6 here. And now what I can check is where we are about the synchronization status with the link up delay checked. So this synchronization is still in progress here. So we have to wait for that to be completed. And after a few minutes, the primary will be forwarding again. So when we'll complete by stopping the Ixia and checking what was the cumulative impact seen by Ixia with all those 20 flows. Each flow is about 800 megabit per second. What is the exact impact that we have? And we are going to just remind that this is not only L2, but this is L2 plus layer 3 OSPF plus BGP with EVPN routes that are transported plus the VXLAN data plane. So it's all of that is currently running with the video streaming and the Ixia flow crossing that VXLAN. So now you see the primary that is forwarding. So we are now back to the nominal situation with step 6 in the slide deck, where we have both the primary and the secondary running with the new version. So Steve, I think it's time to stop Ixia and to check what was the cumulative impact that we saw.
So if I'm reading this correctly, Vincent, we've got a cumulative outage of just over 19 milliseconds, but that's with the 2 steps of upgrading the primary and then the secondary. So we're looking at a maximum individual outage of much less than that.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
So this is cumulated less than 20 milliseconds.
Yeah. So I got that down as just over 12 milliseconds for the primary upgrade, and then just over 7 seconds for when we upgraded the secondary. So we've got that total of 19 milliseconds, just over. Well, Vincent, thank you very much for this great overview of the VSX technology. So let's summarize some of the key benefits we've seen in the demos. So first, we've seen the unique way the CX software is built from the ground up, and in particular, the demonstration of key processes running independently of each other that can be turned on and off without impacting other process services on the switch. And we saw this with the stop and restart of the routing process, where we didn't lose any traffic. Next, we saw the resilience at the circuit level, where we failed a circuit between the edge and the core switches, and the CX software dynamically redistributed traffic from the offending failed circuit over the remaining interface links. So we had a small outage of around 218 milliseconds, but this didn't impact our video streams application as the traffic was redistributed over the other circuits. And then we replicated the failure of a single switch in a VSX configured switch pair. On the primary VSX node, we had our Ixia traffic running through both switch VSX nodes, And we had very little impact on that. It was around 226 milliseconds for the latency overhead for the node failure, which is very good for a major outage, like a switch failure going down on a network. And the last demo we saw, a software upgrade between two major releases, VSX Live Upgrade, with no actual downtime on the network and with very minor impact to traffic latency flowing through it. And the latency figure we had, cumulative, was around 90 milliseconds, but each individual step was no greater than 12 milliseconds. So this feature is going to be extremely valuable to our customers. With all the modern demands on businesses, they typically have limited maintenance windows to run changes, and some customers have a genuine 24/7 operation, 365 days a year. So the VSX Live Upgrade supporting a VSX switch pair can significantly enhance a customer's change control process, minimizing the change window from possibly a major outage to a minor change impact at worst. And some customers may choose to run software upgrades in a quiet moment during the day and consider the upgrade process a minor change without any service disruption. So all these figures together provide the CX software with industry-leading performance for high availability. So that's all from Vincent and myself. So it's back to you, Justin.
Thank you, Vincent and Steve, for explaining VSX throughout the entire episode and showing us this live upgrade and node failure demo. It's important to understand the benefits of VSX and why it's important that we have it in the core and aggregation layers of the campus and the leaf and spine layers of the data center. In our next episode, we'll hear from Yash and Kamal Takodra, technical marketing engineers, who will go over the network analytics engine with us.